something strange happens in arguments. The person who stays calm often wins. Not the loudest voice, not the most aggressive one, the calm one. The person who pauses, listens, and barely raises their voice. Meanwhile, the angry person starts talking faster, louder, messier, and somehow the calm person gains control of the entire conversation. But why? Why does calmness quietly overpower anger? The answer has less to do with intelligence and more to do with how the human brain reacts to emotional pressure. Picture a meeting room. A project has gone wrong and tension is already in the air. Two co-workers sit across from each other. Mark is frustrated. Daniel sits quietly. Mark finally speaks. "You didn't send the information on time." Daniel pauses before responding. "I sent it Tuesday afternoon." Mark leans forward. "No, you didn't. If you had, this wouldn't have happened." Daniel doesn't interrupt. He simply says, "I sent it Tuesday." Mark's voice grows louder. "That's not what I'm seeing here." Now the argument has begun. But something subtle is happening beneath the surface. Mark's frustration is rising. His tone sharpens. His words speed up. Meanwhile, Daniel's voice barely changes. He listens, pauses, responds slowly. And slowly, the room begins to notice something. Not the argument, but the contrast. One person appears in control. The other appears controlled by emotion. And in arguments, perception often matters more than volume. Arguments rarely start with anger. They start with discomfort. Someone feels misunderstood, or blamed, or disrespected. And when that discomfort rises, the brain enters a different state. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing changes. Your thinking becomes narrower. Psychologists call this emotional flooding. When emotional flooding happens, the brain shifts from reasoning to defense. Instead of listening, you prepare to protect yourself. You interrupt. You exaggerate. You try to win. And the more emotional you become, the less clearly you think. The strange part? If the other person remains calm, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Calmness creates psychological contrast. When one person is emotional and the other is steady, the brain automatically compares the two. And this comparison creates three powerful effects. First, credibility. Calm speech signals control, and humans instinctively trust people who appear in control of themselves. Second, tempo control. Arguments accelerate when emotions rise. Voices interrupt each other. Sentences overlap. But calm responses introduce pauses, silence, space. And those pauses slow the emotional momentum of the argument. Third, emotional exposure. When someone yells at a calm person, something uncomfortable happens. Their anger becomes visible, almost exaggerated. The calm person doesn't need to point it out. The contrast reveals it automatically. And this is where control quietly shifts. Calm people understand something subtle about arguments. Arguments are rarely decided by facts. They're decided by emotional stability. The person who loses emotional control begins reacting instead of thinking. They interrupt more. They speak faster. They repeat themselves. And slowly, their argument becomes weaker. not because their points are wrong, but because emotional chaos reduces credibility. Meanwhile, the calm person creates psychological distance. They observe instead of react. They choose their words. They refuse to mirror the other person's frustration. And this refusal quietly shifts the balance of power. Because the moment one person becomes reactive, they stop controlling the conversation. Months after that meeting, Daniel began noticing a pattern. Whenever arguments happened around him, the outcome rarely depended on who spoke the most. It depended on who remained composed. The calmest person often influenced the room without trying, not by dominating the conversation, but by controlling themselves. And that self-control changed how everyone else reacted. Arguments feel like battles of words, but they're rarely won with words. They're won with emotional control. Because when one person reacts and the other observes, the balance of power quietly shifts. Sometimes the strongest position in an argument is simply the ability to stay calm.